My name is Terry, and today I'm going to take you on probably the strangest financial journey you've ever been on. And here's the thing, I'm genuinely excited about this because for the past 6 months, I've been obsessed with something that most financial advisors would laugh at. I've been studying bizarre investments. I'm talking llama farms, vintage lunchboxes, exotic mushroom cultivation, you name it. And you know what? I discovered something that completely changed how I think about building wealth.
See, I got into this because I was tired of the same old advice. Invest in index funds, max out your 401k, buy real estate. Look, that's solid advice, but it's also boring. And more importantly, it made me realize, what if the most interesting opportunities are hiding in places we're taught to ignore? So buckle up, because we're about to explore investments that sound absolutely ridiculous on paper, but some of them, they're making people serious money. Here's a scenario I bet you can relate to. You're scrolling through investment advice online, and it's all the same stuff. S&P 500, bonds, maybe some tech stocks if you're feeling spicy. You close the tab feeling underwhelmed. Because the truth is, you want something more. Not just returns, you want something interesting, something you can actually talk about at dinner parties without people's eyes glazing over. Now you might be thinking, Terry, isn't that exactly the wrong approach to investing? Shouldn't it be boring? And look, I get it. There's that old saying, investing should be like watching paint dry. If you want excitement, take $800 and go to Las Vegas. That's solid wisdom. But here's what most people miss. There's a huge difference between exciting because it's gambling and interesting because it's unconventional. Let me give you a real example. In 2019, a guy named Blake bought a llama farm in Oregon for $340,000. Sounds insane, right? Everyone thought he'd lost his mind. Fast forward to 2024, his operation is generating $180,000 in annual revenue, with profit margins around 35%. That's $63,000 a year in profit from llamas. The thing is, he didn't buy it for excitement. He bought it because he understood something about market inefficiency that we're going to explore today. So let's talk about why weird investments even work in the first place. The conventional wisdom says stick to what everyone knows works. But here's the psychological shift most people never make. Everyone knowing about an investment is precisely what makes it less attractive. Think about it this way. When everyone piles into the same investments, what happens? Prices go up, returns go down. It's basic supply and demand. The S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually over the long term, which is fantastic. But here's a stat that'll surprise you. According to a 2023 Dalbar study, the average investor only earned 6.81% over the same period. Why? Because they're all making the same moves at the same time. Buying high, selling low, following the herd. Now, I'm not saying abandon traditional investments. That would be stupid. What I'm saying is this. Inefficient markets create opportunities. Let me break down the math on that llama farm. Blake spent $340,000 up front. His annual costs, feed, veterinary care, facilities, run about $117,000. Revenue of $180,000 minus costs of $117,000 equals $63,000 in annual profit. That's an 18.5% return on his initial investment every single year. Compare that to the stock market's average 10%, and suddenly those llamas don't seem so crazy, do they? But here's what most people don't realize. It's not about llamas specifically. It's about finding markets where most investors aren't looking. There's real, sustainable demand, and you can develop actual expertise. All right, let's dig into some specific examples, because this is where it gets really interesting. Vintage toys. There's a collector in Michigan who started buying sealed vintage action figures in 2015. His average purchase price? $300 per figure. In 2024, those same figures are selling for $2,800 to $4,500 each. That's a 933% to 1,400% return in 9 years.
A sealed 1985 Optimus Prime toy sold at auction for $12,650 in 2023. Think about that. A toy. Now you might be thinking, that's just luck, right? How could anyone predict that? Actually, it wasn't luck at all. Here's the psychology behind it. Nostalgia is one of the most powerful purchasing motivators in human behavior. People who grew up in the 1980s are now in their peak earning years, ages 40 to 55. They have disposable income and they want to recapture childhood memories. This collector understood that trend before it exploded. Exotic mushrooms. There's a woman in Washington state growing lion's mane and shiitake mushrooms in a 1,200 square foot converted garage. Her startup cost was $28,000. She's now doing $156,000 in annual sales to local restaurants and farmers markets. With a 42% profit margin, that's $65,520 per year in profit. The thing is, she recognized something crucial. High-end restaurants pay premium prices for fresh, locally sourced specialty ingredients. While everyone was talking about tech stocks, she was building relationships with chefs and understanding their supply chain problems. Rental chickens. Yes, you read that right. A business in Pennsylvania rents out chickens to suburban families who want fresh eggs but aren't ready to commit to permanent chicken ownership. Rental packages cost about $400 to $600 for a summer season. The operation manages about 200 chickens across 80 rental agreements annually. Annual revenue? Approximately $38,000. Costs run around $14,000. Profit? $24,000 from an initial investment of about $18,000. That's a 133% annual return. The pattern here? Each of these investments solved a real problem in an underserved market. Here's what most people never realize about these weird investments. They're not really that weird when you understand the fundamentals. Every successful investment, whether it's Apple stock or a llama farm, comes down to the same basic principles. Is there genuine demand? Can you deliver value better than alternatives? Are the economics sustainable? Do you have or can you develop real expertise? The psychological shift you need to make is this. Stop thinking about what sounds respectable and start thinking about what makes economic sense. Look, I'm not saying sell all your index funds and buy a mushroom farm. What I'm saying is that diversification isn't just about different stocks. It's about different types of assets, different market exposures, different risk profiles. Here's a real-world strategy, the 90-10 approach. Keep 90% of your portfolio in traditional, boring investments, but that other 10%, that's your learning money. That's where you can explore these unconventional opportunities. If you have a $100,000 portfolio, that's $10,000 to test something different. Start a small side business in an interesting niche. Buy into a friend's quirky but well-planned venture. Invest in collectibles you genuinely understand. The key word there is understand. Never invest in something just because it's weird. Invest because you've done the homework and you see an opportunity others are missing. So here's what I want you to do after watching this video. First, I want you to ask yourself, what do I know about that most investors don't? Maybe you're into vintage video games, or you understand beekeeping, or you know the sneaker market inside and out. That knowledge is valuable, potentially very valuable. Second, spend some time this week researching one unconventional investment that genuinely interests you. Not to immediately pour money into it, but to understand it. What are the economics? Who are the successful people in that space? Third, and this is crucial, don't abandon the fundamentals. Weird investments should complement a solid financial foundation, not replace it. The most interesting thing I've learned through all of this research, the people making money in these bizarre markets aren't gamblers or dreamers. They're people who did the boring work of understanding supply, demand, costs, and value. They just did it in markets other people were too conventional to explore. Your homework assignment: find one weird investment opportunity and actually run the numbers on it. Calculate the costs, potential revenue, and realistic returns. You might be surprised at what you discover.
If this video changed how you think about investing, hit that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started. Drop a comment telling me the weirdest investment you've ever heard of. I read every single one.
Remember, conventional wisdom got you conventional results. Sometimes the path to extraordinary returns runs through a llama farm. I'm Terry, and I'll see you in the next one.